Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. Today, we're going to take a look at the top 10 cannabis industry news stories of the week, starting with number 10. The real reason why U.S. federal government hasn't legalized cannabis. According to one Harvard economist, the U.S. government loses up to $20 billion a year by keeping cannabis illegal. Some experts believe that the U.S. federal government makes up for prohibition costs and lost tax revenue in other ways, such as by not allowing cannabis companies to write off regular business expenses. In the end, the legalization will happen not for any other reason except for tax revenue. So I'm still waiting for Mexico to legalize to kind of incentivize U.S. government, if you will, to legalize. They're already looking at individual state revenues. They're looking very closely at Canada. And once Mexico goes legal, that sandwich is going to force the U.S. to legalize, not for medicinal purposes or just anything else other than money. So number 9 is the FDA sends an overdue CBD enforcement update to Congress. Hemp and its derivatives were federally legalized back in 2018 with the Farm Bill, and the FDA has issued an update to Congress last week on the status rulemaking for CBD. That's going to help states like Washington and California that have made it illegal for consumables such as CBD beverages and gummies and anything else. That will hopefully update some laws and allow for additional products to be sold in the U.S. Number 8, the top 10 cannabis industry news stories of the week, according to Benzinga, is that the MLB can smoke cannabis but can't be sponsored by cannabis companies. So Major League Baseball is teaming up to analyze and certify legal contaminant-free CBD products, meaning full spectrum probably won't be allowed, but an isolate will. So it has zero THC. So spring training is in full swing, and the Major League Baseball is further clarifying its stance on marijuana. Players can now consume cannabis without risk of discipline, but the league explained in a new memo that they can't show up to work under the influence, and at least for now are barred from entering into commercial agreements with companies in the marijuana industry. So we did a previous podcast with Marvin Washington about the collective bargaining agreement that states that the NFL is going to be tested less. And when they do, if somebody does test positive, they won't be suspended, only monetarily penalized. So still taking money off the table from these players in the NFL. Hopefully that will stop, but they seem to be more interested in the money than these other leagues. So we'll have to wait and see. Number 7 is that Joe Biden is frustrated that people still think he believes marijuana is a gateway drug. So Biden wants to make sure that you don't think he still believes cannabis is a gateway drug. I don't think he knows what he remembers. He's just kind of flip-flopping to figure it out, just like every other administration. They all flip-flop to get the votes. So we'll have to wait to see what really pans out. Number 6 is that there's 50 state banking associations that are demanding a Senate vote on cannabis banking legalization. So they urge the markup of the Safe Banking Act, which was approved by the House last year. The issue is that Idaho Senator Crapo is in charge of that committee. He's obviously doesn't really care about anything because if you look at his state, the only thing they're known for is potatoes. So I think that they can afford maybe another agricultural crop or at least somebody moving to that state. They're all going to Spokane, which is the second largest city in Washington state on the border of Idaho. And they are selling a lot to Idaho residents. So they need to wake up and figure it out. But in the meantime, there's banking associations from 49 states, including Puerto Rico, that sent a letter to the chairman and ranking member of the Senate Banking Committee on Friday, imploring them to advance a bill protecting financial institutions that serve as state legal or recreational regulated cannabis businesses. So if or when that happens, that's going to be huge because that's going to give these companies an opportunity to expand and scale and automate, hopefully write off employee taxes, number one expense there, and afford them the ability to look forward. Right now, so many have their head in the sands trying to deal with potential legislation like 10% THC caps and all these other things that are not providing small business owners an opportunity or ability to look forward. It's not business as usual. They're not able to look at scaling or expanding or anything because they are so inundated with potential bills in their own little bubble that they can't look towards international or interstate opportunities. Number 5 on the list of top 10 cannabis industry news stories of the week are that Canadians are drinking less as cannabis gets easier to buy. We've seen this in every single state rollout, that cannabis industry statistics are showing us a steep sales decline in 2019 in several provinces. But with the slow rollout in Ontario and Vancouver, BC, it's going to probably take a little while for them to fully understand what that looks like coast to coast within Canada. In the US, we've seen it in every single rollout, whether it's Washington, Alaska, Colorado, Oregon, California, Nevada. All of those states are showing a decline in not only opioid use, but consumption of alcohol and any wrecks that are associated with impaired driving. There is biased articles, though, so you kind of have to look to see who's writing them and what they're writing about. But the general consensus is the sales are going down, and so are the alcohol-related injuries by driving. So, all in all, good news. So number 4 is that Ontario received 450 cannabis store applications. That's a good thing. We just mentioned that Ontario and Vancouver, BC were really, really slow with their rollouts. So there's 450 cannabis store applications that were filed in Ontario on March 2nd, the first day that retail store authorization submissions were accepted under the province's new open market process. So hopefully with that, more stores, more opportunities, more products, on pace to hopefully open up stores and become more normalized and create some more opportunities. Number 3 is that the DEA admits a state-level cannabis legalization reduces illegal market demands. So the DEA gave an overview of its enforcement efforts and made predictions about future trends, acknowledging in a report that the state-level marijuana legalization reduces instances of illegal interstate trafficking, probably because the top 2 decision makers for any purchase is price and convenience. So it's incredibly convenient to go to a store, but they have to make sure those prices come way down. 10% or 10 milligram caps on edibles is not convenient, and whatever price they're charging is not going to be there long term. Really going to have to figure that out, because a 100 milligram cap in Washington just isn't enough either. People are just not going to be buying all of those products with the additional packaging and pricing. It's just not going to work out. They're going to find that out really quick. Number 2 is Michigan wholesale marijuana flower prices soar on tight supply, lack of community approvals. So municipalities opposed to cannabis and strict testing have caused a bottleneck in the supply chain. There's a tight supply chain of wholesale recreational marijuana flower, one of the youngest adult use markets in the US, leading to a sharply higher price and producer struggles to keeping pace with the growing demand. Very similar to Illinois and every other rollout we've had. I'm sure Michigan saw some FOMO from Illinois' tax revenues, which brings us to number 1 on the story. Illinois recreational sales totaled 35 million in February. They had 35 million in January. So the adult use cannabis consumers spent almost 35 million at Illinois dispensaries in February, a slight decline from the previous month. But as an industry analyst said, the market still holds promise. So nothing new here, always a slow rollout, always high prices. Those always come down no matter what market we've seen, with maybe the exception of Las Vegas having kind of a monopoly on the number of retail stores. But eventually that's going to come down as well, just a matter of time. With that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't, and I'm out.